Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. Today, I am joined by Thomas Attig, one of the most respected voices in grief studies and the author of How We Grieve, Relearning the World, The Heart of Grief, Catching Your Breath in Grief, and his new collection, Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows. Tom's work is really fascinating because it challenges the idea that grief is something that we simply get over. But instead, what he does is he really helps us understand grief as the process of relearning how to live and love and find meaning in a world that has forever been changed by loss. And I welcome to the show, Tom.
It's really nice to be here, and you got it exactly right. You must be looking at something.
Yeah, so I'd like to prepare a little introduction for you. Um, so look, we've all experienced some type of loss in our life, and there's no competition as to who's lost more than someone else. But it's very challenging, isn't it? I've lost my daughter who at age 15, and the process that you do have to go through. It's in some ways it's very fascinating that you do have to relearn how to live again, at the same time celebrating the grief and the person's life and all that kind of stuff. And I've found it's been quite a journey for myself.
How long
Um,
has it been?
it's been just over 3 years now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. You often, as I said in the introduction, there you talk about grief as something that kind of takes our breath away. I can really relate to that. For somebody that has perhaps never experienced that type of loss, what's really happening to us in those moments? I suppose it's those first moments, isn't it? It's the hours, it's the days, it's the months after somebody that we love passes away.
Um, I think several things can surprise us, and I think probably the most common surprise is just how pervasive the feeling of loss is when someone you love dies, because they have woven themselves in the fabric of your life, and
Mm.
they've found a place in your anticipation of the future. And when it's a serious loss, it's a major change in what's going to be possible in that future. And it's the overwhelming size of it, scale of it, weight of it, punch of it, if you will, that I think catches people by surprise. And some feel as if they've had their breath taken away, like they've been punched, or a heavy
Mm.
load has just fallen on their shoulders that feels like maybe they can't carry it. And it grips you and takes center stage inevitably. It's not sort of edge of the day uh, event. It's the heart of what's happening to you right now, and it feels like it's going to be really hard to get past it.
Mm. What What is it that perhaps, I don't know, fascinated is the right word, but for you to obviously invest your life's work into this space, what was it that you like drew you to that?
This is a little bit of a longer story. I'll try to make it brief. My dad was one of 10. My mother was one of 9. Dad was 18 years older than mom. We lived in the Chicago area where my mother's family concentrated, and my father's family was spread out over the country. And his relatives started dying while I was small.
Mm,
Uh, and letters would come in. We never went to distant funerals, and his family didn't have the means to do that, and it wasn't common to do that at the time. So a letter would come in, and my mother would open the letter and read it to my brother and my father and me out loud. And I was 5 or 6 when I started remembering those letters, and some were several pages long and detailed, and feelings came out as the letter was being read and so on. And after you've heard several of those, you get sort of used to the idea that part of living is stories about people dying.
Mm.
My large families made that a part of my life, and it isn't often a part of young people's lives. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
grew into that, and when I was a little bit older, and some of Mom's family started dying, I was taken to the hospital and to visit my dying aunts or my dying uncles, and I just became accustomed to it. That's the beginning.
yes. And when I mean, we hear all kinds of things, don't we, when people say, "Oh, but time heals all wounds," and you just move on from where it is because, like, whatever somebody determines as X period of time is like passed by, it's time to move on. But I guess one of your signature ideas is that we really need to relearn the world that we're now living in. Perhaps could you tell us a little bit about that?
I think I can tell you quite a bit about that. Uh, I started teaching about death and dying after getting a degree in philosophy, and I was teaching at a university where they had a new program in, well, a new college actually in health and human services. And they had nursing, gerontology, social work, child and family development. And the Department of Philosophy was beginning to teach applied philosophy courses. And I thought, having taught a couple of years there, that the students could benefit from a course on death and dying. I got approval for it. I started teaching it. Eventually, I started asking my students to tell me about their own personal experiences in
Yes.
relating to death and dying in all kinds of contexts. And one of the assignments was to talk about and describe their three most important loss experiences. And if they were about death, that's what we really wanted. If they weren't about death and dying, you could still write about those. I read hundreds of those cases in the first few years of my teaching. The course became very popular. So I was teaching course after course after course. And they wrote about all kinds of things, but they did not write about going through five stages, as seemed to be the vogue at the time. Everybody thought that dying unfolded in five stages, and quickly they erroneously leaped to the conclusion that grieving also unfolds in five stages. That's not what my students wrote about. They wrote about how they couldn't go into rooms in their home where they'd just spoken with someone who had died. They didn't know how to talk to grandma because dad just died and he was her son. How
Yeah.
do I talk to my grandmother who was grieving? I've never had to do something like that. Uh, Things that were coming out of church pulpits didn't go down very well, so they talked about what the minister was saying that didn't make much sense. They talked about how it would be difficult to walk through certain neighborhoods where they walked through with this person that they loved, and they were going to be going through alone. They talked about financial difficulties that they were now going to have to face when a husband or a life's companion just died. They talked about all kinds of challenges having to do with how they're going to have to change their daily life now that a major figure is missing, or
Mm.
their future when they were anticipating a partner or a child to raise or whatever, and now that person wasn't going to be there, was going to hold a prominent place, but now what? And I eventually started feeding back to them what I was hearing. I said, none of you have mentioned anything about denial or anger or bargaining or acceptance or depression. You've told me about how your world's different and your future's different. And how are you going to live in that different world? Is grieving really about that's what you're telling me? Is it really about you're wondering how to find your way into living meaningfully again in a world that's changed profoundly? And they
Mm,
said, that's it. And none of the stuff I've been reading anywhere has talked about any of that at all. You're on to something. And I started writing about it. And people who worked in the field told me, that's really kind of a revolutionary way of thinking about this. I can tell you one of the big differences. I would say that up until about the 1980s, what dominated in writing about grief and loss was grief reaction, reaction in sorrow, taking in the suffering and the breaking of your life and the breaking of who you are uh, in your life. It's what happens to you. And who wouldn't dread being stuck in what happens to you if it's as dreadful as the depth of sorrow following when someone dies? Most of our human experiences are not just about reacting or being passive and hopeless and helpless and choiceless in the experience we're having. Most of
mm,
our experiences are also about ways through, reaching through,
yeah.
choosing how to come out of the worst of what you're experiencing, not to make it all go away, but to work your way through it in a meaningful way, which is responding. And I believe that responding in grief involves all of the following. It's choice filled, it's potentially quite hopeful. I think the key pivot in grieving is moving from loving uh, in separation while a person is alive
Mm,
to loving in separation after the person has died.
mm,
Moving from loving in presence to continuing to love in separation. And the choices are many, and the potential for continuing loving is amazing. Um,
yeah, I
Let me
agree.
just, if I had an audience, and we had your audience in an auditorium with us this afternoon. At this point, I think I would turn to the audience and say, um, when you came here to be uh, witness to this discussion this afternoon, um, you left almost everybody that you know and love behind. Raise your hand if you think that when you left them, they stopped loving you.
Mm,
You're separated from them. Is separation necessary? How many of you think nobody ever raises their hand? Here's another question. How many of you will confess right now that when you left everybody behind, you stopped loving them? Anybody?
yeah.
No. Well, right now, we're loving in separation. All the people who survive with us and who are uh, alive today in our lives playing important roles. We know a lot about loving in separation. If we
Yeah.
just reflect about it for a while, how do you do it?
Mm,
Well, right now, we've all been remembering all these people, and memories influence us and ways in which they shaped us, we can continue being grateful for. So right now, this afternoon, think about all those people who are still alive you're separated from. How do you love them when you're separated?
mm,
You could write essays for days spelling out how you do that. Well, it's only what requires their physical presence that you can't do anymore when someone has died. You can do everything else. You can talk about them the way we're talking about them right now. You can remember them. You can be grateful for what you remember. When you think about it, you're a different person because this person was in your life. You're
mm,
still different that way. And you can appreciate being different that way. They've given you things sort of beyond counting. If you take the time to think of what they are, you have incredible gifts from the person who has died that you still have. And
Yes.
if we think about them as they're dying, worrying about you and how you're going to get on after they're gone, they've got all kinds of wishes for you that you probably knew about. They
Mm,
didn't want you to fall apart. They didn't want you to stop living because they died. They didn't want you to turn bad or sour because they died. They didn't want you to crawl into a hole because they died. They wanted you to be the dad you had always been for them, the brother you or a sister
mm,
you'd always been, and so on. And they say, look, it's going to hurt. I want the hurt to kind of minimize. But here's another set of questions for the people in the audience. How many of you think you're going to stop loving the person who died when they
mm.
died? Nobody. How many of you think you're going to stop missing them when once they've died? Nobody raises their hand. Well, the idea of closure doesn't work out as much of a descriptor of what grieving is about, does it? You
Mm.
change your relationship with them and how you affirm it and value it. And how you, when you do that and think more and more about how you're grateful for having had them in your life and how you're a better person and a different person because they were there and
Yeah,
what their wishes are for you and deepest desires are for you as a survivor, you can find motivation to work at minimizing the sorrow that's never going to go away
yeah,
and maximizing what they would want you to be.
yeah.
And you'll get into a place where you're more grateful than sorrowful. And that's about as good as you can get. You can't make the pain go away, but you can be in a better place while you're living with it. Does this make any sense?
Yeah, it's beautifully said. I can relate to every word. I think when when I lost my daughter, I mean, there's so much sadness around burying a child, right? Well, she was cremated, but you know what I mean. Losing
Yeah.
her, and, like celebrating her life and everything. And you think no parent should have to do that. And on the one hand, like from time to time, people will reach out to me and say how they can't believe it. There's how devastated they still are and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
With nice words and it's kindness, but the way that I think about it is, and when Liv was her name, and when she passed away, I didn't think I'm going to create something amazing out of this. What has just happened is that like her legacy has evolved over time, and really out of something so tragic and so much pain around her loss, it's it's almost like something beautiful has grown out of it. It's kind of like the ashes have gone down and formed this tremendous fertilizer for this seedling to grow, and now we have this, most beautiful tree or flowers or whatever you want to think about that have emerged from the tragedy of everything that's happened to her. And
Mhm.
um, I talk to her every day. I think about her every day. I mean, she's here with me in her urn right next to me here right
Does
now.
she talk back? Does she say, way to go, Dad?
Yeah,
Does
well,
she
she
say,
does. She does. We
there you
give
go.
virtual high fives and we sit up and we watch movies together and do
There
all
you go.
do all kinds of things. And I know some people can hear that and say, oh, well, there's something wrong with you. You haven't properly dealt with it. But it's not, I don't come from a place of, oh, I know she's not gone. She's really alive and she's sitting with me. It's not like that at all. It's like, it's what you carry in here and up here around like you say, the last I often say to people that maybe really going through something bad, and I said, yeah, do you know what they would have wanted for you? I'm sure they would have said, now when I go, make sure you're miserable, make sure you're sad, make sure you don't go on and achieve any of your dreams, make sure you sit there and sob over me every single day. I said, nobody wants that
Yeah,
for
the daughter of your nightmare.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And so in some ways, it's like a completely polarizing view, but in some ways, like I think about it in my mind, it's just a slight twist. It's like maybe it's a couple of degrees of how you think about the same situation that can still fill you with love and empowering you to move forward and do great things. Like through Liv's Legacy, we've raised $56.5 million.
Only. Oh, it's just getting started. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Right? People are like, oh, when are you going to stop? It's like, why? Why would I stop? But now we're having global reach,
Oh, good for
and
you.
like impacting, policymakers around the world and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it's beautiful. And I say to her, like, I'll hold her urn and I give her a kiss and I say, Liv, this is all you doing this. I'm saying the words, but it's all because of you. And to me, that's really, really powerful.
Let me tell you sort of where I started in writing up some of this stuff that I mentioned I've been talking about with my students. And it led me eventually to this sort of culminating book
Mm.
that got us together called Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadows. This is a collection of writings starting back in the 80s. And the first one I have in here is called, um, oh no, I can't even think of what it's called. It takes exception to how we think of who we are as selves in this Western culture that we've been raised in and living in and making those skyscrapers you've got in your background and so on. And there is a tendency to be surprised when someone dies, that you feel like you're falling apart, that you
Yeah.
feel like you're breaking. Your heart is breaking, but your life is falling apart. And that way of thinking and appreciating and actually experiencing, that is real experience that people have. They feel that things are breaking. If you think of selves the way a lot of people do in Western culture, especially as a solid atom floating in social space, completely integrated, self contained, self controlled, and so on. And a relationship is like this, a couple of atoms floating about, and you get a bigger
Yeah.
picture. You got these balls floating about. What does grief look like in this image of the self when somebody dies?
Mm.
Nothing happened to this one.
Yeah.
It's still perfectly integrated and self-contained and ready to take on the rest of the world. And that just is not what happens. And it isn't what my students presented to me. And I started thinking about how are we structured exactly? How do we connect and settle ourselves in the world? And I realized that we are uh, emerging from a great web that connects absolutely everything to everything. Some of the connections are pretty remote, and some are quite close and very dear to us. From the moment we're born, lifelines are feeding us, and we're incapable of feeding ourselves, and we're incapable of taking care of ourselves. The world nurtures us into abilities of being able to start to bring food to our mouths, then eventually walk, and later learn languages, and so on. The languages connect us by other lifelines. When we're
Yeah.
fully adults, we're like a very complex web of connections to our children, to our life partners, to our business partners, to our friends, to our cities, our neighborhoods, our nations, our loves and activities and experiences, and so on. And when a web, say a spider web in the corner of a barn, uh, uh, has a blow, which is like a blow when someone dies, it's not that the whole web sort of disintegrates. There's
Yeah.
a kind of a wedge of it that's got an injury in it. Uh, in the case where it's your daughter who has died, you still have all kinds of relationships with other people that are still
Yes.
mostly intact, although some of them are in crisis. If it's your life partner and it's your child, you're both hurting terribly. All right, but your friends that you know at the office, they aren't very personally affected by what's happened to you. They're
Yeah.
still intact and they're still your buddies and partners, and so on. And I think what grieving is like is reweaving the web,
Yeah.
which adjusting and adapting your relationships to almost everything in your life and putting it back together. And part of your resilience and part of what helps you is in this process of weaving these webs, you poured your love into your daughter, and she
Yeah.
poured her love into you and into your wife and into your family. And all of that giving from your daughter is still in you. So part of what's happening with your having this success in sort of giving back to the world in the name of your daughter is the part of her that's still in you is motivating you to do the stuff that you are successful with.
Yeah.
And there are
Absolutely.
other people who motivate you too, but these lines of care are largely the components of our resilience. And
Yeah.
we're not like a bouncing ball that's resilient that way. We've there's giving and taking all around us and within us in every dimension of us. And a good part of what's been given to you is still being given to you from your daughter.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah. I agree.
recognize that. And it's feeding you and it's making you feel pretty good. And
Yeah.
it should.
Uh, what I like about what the work that you do and what we said earlier about relearning, it wasn't like Liv passed away and I had all the answers and I knew all this stuff. It was like I had to learn or relearn, if you like, how do I move forward and keep me living the dreams that her and I talked about, well, not
Yeah.
just her achieving, but me achieving as well. But how do I keep moving forward with in an empowering way and not just allow the sadness to completely overrun me and immobilize me so that I'm not there for my other daughter? How can I do that?
Yeah.
And it has been a journey, and then probably to some extent, I'm still learning. I think we learn about ourselves all the time, every day, and I'm learning more and more things all the time about perhaps I don't know. I think sometimes we can sit there and say, how do you make sense of all of this? How do you make sense of her not being here and taking her life and, all that kind of stuff at 15 when you can see what their future is, but they can't see it in the moments and depths of despair and everything. And yeah, that's been a whole learning process for me. So I do like the terminology there that you use. I think it really does help. I wanted to ask you about one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of people face is the people around them. So, like, let's just say my friends or colleagues or whatever, and it's almost like somebody passes and they just
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know what to do. And what I find really curious is you find out those people that, oh, I don't know, whenever there's these real pressure points in life, you find out who's going to step up, who's going to step away, and who's
Mhm.
just I don't know, neutral, if you like. And I've had that in Liv's case, for instance, people that I thought, wow, you know what, Tom, he's going to step up for me, and it's like you've just vanished. You've just
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
and it's like, what? And then there'll be people that stepped in for me. And I'm like, wow, I never would like if you had have asked me who would step up in this situation, I would have said, okay, these people. And yeah,
Mhm.
certainly not these, but these did and these didn't. It's like, wow. So my question is, what
You
would
learn
be
things.
some really good advice that we could give people that are supporting others? I mean, I think the people in support, they're looking for what's that? awesome thing I can say to make Tom feel better? How can I take away his pain? How can I do this? Which is not their job, but what's some advice that we could give people that are trying to support somebody in this space?
Well, I remember just very simple things in the early days when I was teaching. Um, Something as simple as if you don't know what to say, but you want to say something, say that you don't know what to say.
Mm,
All right. And that'll keep you in the conversation as opposed to, I don't know what to say. This is kind of embarrassing. It feels awkward. I think maybe I better get out of here. The kind of
yeah.
move you were just making. Let me two little examples attached to a woman whose 3-year-old fell off a swing in a backyard on a Friday, and by Monday she was dead. She
Mm,
didn't break anything, but she had an incipient infection developing in her brain, and it was accelerated by the blow, so she died. Two people she encountered who wanted to be caring in some way or another. One was the minister, and she's going up the stairs into the church, and he reaches out his hand and says, "Congratulations," squeezing her hand hard. She says, "Congratulations for what? You have a child in heaven." She said, "If I could have punched him, I would have. I would have flattened him, but I just didn't have the energy for it. I just went around him and ignored him." In the next week, a woman from down the block who also had a 3-year-old whose child had played with the woman's daughter in taking turns in their backyards and in their houses and so on. The woman approached her and said, "I heard what happened to your daughter. I know we haven't really grown close because we've been busy with all kinds of things in our houses and so on, but our daughters have been playing together for the last half a year. Um, I happen to have a lot of photographs. Um, Maybe you don't want to, maybe you do. If you want to come down and have a cup of tea or coffee with me, we could go over the photos together."
yeah.
She said, "This is one of the few people who wanted to say anything to me. She
Mm,
wasn't afraid of hurting me. She just did the realistic thing and said, if this would be uncomfortable, no. But if you'd like to do it, come on." She said they spent over an hour, and it was one of the best things anybody did for her.
yeah.
The climax of that whole story is she had a hard time finding many people who were willing to be with her and support her, but she found some other parents, and the parents got together and formed a mutual support group. And by the time they were visiting my class, it had been 2 or 3 years since their children had died, and they were well on the way to giving back in some constructive way for having this wonderful child in their lives. Uh, and just to show you that it never stops,
Yes.
um, a few years later, um, they went to the sand dunes in Indiana and walked up the sand dunes and were there to enjoy the sand dunes for the day with the older brother of the girl who had died. And he was now about 8 or 9 years old. Um, and they got up to the top of the sand dune, and the woman started crying, and she was crying hard. And her husband was there, and he said, "Do you want to go back down?" No, 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 you just don't understand. Well, tell me what's happening. I just remembered that we wanted to be here with our daughter Mary. And I had forgotten that when we planned for this trip. But
Mm,
by the time I put in the sweat to get up to the top of the hill, I realized it, and I missed her, and I'm really uncomfortable. He said, "Well, if you're uncomfortable, why don't we just go?" She said, "No, no, no, you don't understand. I just have
yeah.
to cry. Put your arms
Yeah.
around me and just hold me until I stop crying, and then we'll talk
Yeah.
about what to do." And they did that, and he's learning lessons about taking care of a wife. And she says, "Okay, I'm okay now." And he says, "Well, you want to go?" No, no, no. It feels to me, and I like the feeling, as if I'm here representing Mary,
Yeah.
and I'm having the experience as her representative. Let's enjoy our time here today, and let's talk about her a bit while we're at it.
Yeah.
and it's going to be a good day for all of us. That's the way it works.
Yeah. 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 Beautifully said. I think what, obviously having gone through my journey, if somebody else is going through theirs, it's very easy for me to say, I'd say it was you, and I'd say, um, Tom, what if I just come around and we just sit?
Yeah.
Don't have to say anything. And then you'll
No.
probably find at some point words will come out. But sometimes just having someone there, whether it's a hug, an arm around you, whatever, say, we're going to get through this. And, like, or what do you need right now?
Mhm.
Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like me to make you some food, get you some food? Do you want to have a look
Yeah.
through some photos? Do you, whatever. I think the thing is, I think we think that we're here to solve someone else's issue, and whether it's a grief issue or not, but you're not, because you're not going to have all the answers for that person.
No.
But just being there with them and for them, I think can mean the absolute world. So I think sometimes you've just got to have the courage to just say, yeah, I'm really not sure what, like you said, I really don't, I'm not sure what to say, but I'm going to sit here with you.
Let me talk to you about another little topic in my book that hardly anybody else writes about at all. In fact, I cannot identify another person who writes about grief who puts any emphasis on this at all, but I think it's vitally important. Um, the difference between the kinds of challenges that life presents to us. Some are problems. We have egos that get really well trained, especially in the West.
Yeah.
And a problem is a challenge that you can put on your list of problems, and some will take more time than others, but you can finish with them, you can complete them, you can be done with them, you can exercise control in engaging with them, you
Mm.
can move on and be done with it and be confident that you're done with it.
Yep.
Um, it's finite, it's manageable, it's controllable, and you are wired with your ego to take care of these things. Some are more difficult. Sometimes you bring in a little bit of a team, and the two of you or three of you get together and work it out and finish with it.
Yes.
Mysteries don't present the same kind of challenge. They are constants in life. Let's talk about a few things that are constant. Um, we're small. Everything changes. We're uncertain in lots of circumstances about what to do or how to do it. Um, we are destined to suffer. We love. We have friendships. Um, all of these are things that challenge us, but they present new faces, and we don't get to change them. We get to change in response to them.
Mm.
We are mystery responders, and
Mm.
grieving is one of the biggest exercises in contending and engaging with mysteries that you'll ever have in your life. And when
Yeah.
someone dies and you're a teenager, you have teenage experiences of missing that person. When you
Yes.
become a young adult, you have different experiences of missing that person. When you get to be 50 or 60 and you're still remembering that person, your memories and the meanings you attach to them and find in them are going to be quite different. You will be dancing with your dead daughter the rest of your life. And
Yes.
she's a wonder of earth, and she offers you more good than the pain of her having died. Find that good, live with it, and you live better. And that's what grieving is about, I think. Um,
It's
that
beautifully said.
person who died would not want their death to overwhelm you and make you smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so
And
true.
you're doing it right.
Mhm. Just a couple more questions. I'm wondering, with all the work and the wisdom that you have around this work that you've done, how has that helped you in, like, personally, but also perhaps the conversations that you have with people to help them live their own life now more effectively, even if they haven't, say, lost, that someone special in their life yet. But how has that helped you become more profoundly wise about how people should live now?
Huh. Well, that's a small question. I've got a matchbook I wrote the answer on. No matches in this house, by the way. That doesn't happen. Just let me tell you a little bit about what happened in this book.
Mm,
The short of it is, in the early part of my life, I became a philosopher. And I was in graduate school, and I attended my father's funeral, and I was driving back to graduate school, and it occurred to me that I'm studying with a whole bunch of philosophers, and a lot of them are a lot older than I am, and a lot more mature than I am, quite possibly wiser than I am. But my experiencing of them, which may not be fair, but this is where I was at the time, was I want to sit down and have a good conversation, friend to friend, adult to adult, something, uh, with a philosopher at this time.
yeah.
It just feels like I should be talking with a philosopher. And I didn't think of any of my teachers as suitable for me to have that conversation. Some of them were way over my head, some of them were career pursuers, and some of them were strangers and I didn't know them well enough. And I was probably unfair to them as I was thinking of them as not suitable to talk with. It turned out a couple of years later, one of them was really good, but I didn't know it
Mm,
at the time. But I vowed to myself, I'm going to be a philosopher, and I want to be the kind of philosopher that you want to take a walk down the sidewalk with and
mhm,
talk about what matters to you now.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
we can sit down and get really serious, and so on. So I wanted to do that. I had no inkling that I was going to be thinking about death and dying almost constantly for the rest of my life, but I got into the teaching of it. And it was the kind of teaching I had always wanted to do, and it's what I found in the best of the teachers that I had. And it became second nature to me after a
Yes.
while. Along the way, I started accumulating what I thought were bits of, so that's a better way to live.
Mm,
No, that's a better way to live too. About 6 or 7 years into teaching this course, I was invited by some people living in a dormitory on campus to come, and they said, "Come and deliver your last lecture." And what do you mean? No, give a talk as if it's your last chance to convey something significant that you've learned about living a life. All right. There were three of us that night. The first one talked about um, jimmying with the appropriate shape of television advertising. And I thought she didn't understand the assignment. All right. And I had spent my time thinking about what little bits of wisdom or whatever am I picking up in doing this? And I'd been collecting cartoons and quotations, and I took them out of this box and I put together a talk called Fragile Humanity, Handle with Care. All right. And I said, there are four questions that keep coming up as we're doing this death and dying stuff, and you're thinking about living a life. Is it okay to be impermanent, to have to die? Because that's who we are. Is it okay to be small and insignificant in the face of the eons of galaxies that surround us? They're just these little
Yeah.
guys.
A little bits,
Is it
yeah.
okay that we have to suffer? And is it okay that we're uncertain, and especially uncertain about things that seem to be just about as important as anything can be?
Mm,
And these questions weigh on people. And you can be insistent that no, they're not okay, and feel your powerlessness. All right. You can be insistent and say no, they're not okay, and feel helpless, and the smallness and the impermanence just weigh on you more and more. Or you can say, this is what I am. This is me and my bones. This is the life that's been given to me. It's limited and fragile.
Mm.
Be careful with it. Don't squander it. Don't waste it. And then I delivered that to a couple of professional audiences later, and most of them were counselors. And I started saying these things, and I said, and if you persist in saying no, you will wind up in some counselor's office, and you will be talking to a counselor for a long time. And all the counselors went, yeah, those are my people. All right. And I think I've really gotten to a point where this decades long pondering these things has made me much more patient, much
Yeah.
more gentle, much more appreciative, much more grateful for what I
Yeah.
do have. It
Yes.
is a wonder that you and I get to take a breath and be aware of it.
Mm.
It's a miracle when you think about it. I mean, what
Of
has to
course.
come together to make our lives possible is
Yes.
just mind-boggling, and that we're self-conscious, and all this wonderful stuff is here for us, and we
Yes.
can help others discover that it's here too.
Yes.
Uh, Cultivate this appreciation of how fragile we are and how appropriate gratitude is, and you'll live better.
Yeah.
If you want to sum it in a sentence, that's me.
Beautiful. I just love the way that you've reflected on all of that. Tom, this has been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you from a world perspective of just devoting so much of your life to this space and helping people relearn how to still love themselves and their loved ones through the enormity of things that people don't really want to get through, but actually by the time you relearn how to get through it, you become a better person on the other side. You've held up your book a couple of times. If people want to, let's hold up the book again. If people want to get in touch with you, I will put the links below here. But if you wanted to, if you've got a website and how people can get a copy of your book and everything, what's the best way to do that?
I have to tell you that I was surprised a couple of months ago when the book had been out for 2 or 3 months that I got a notice from Oxford. Oxford
Mm,
has been publishing books for 400 years. So it's a privilege to publish with them. And
absolutely.
they told me that they wanted me to make as widely available as possible what amounts to a gift offer from them,
Okay.
with uh, a visit to Oxford University Press website.
Yes.
You can go to book orders, or you can go to this book, this title, and
Yes.
they'll bring you a page. They'll give you a full description of it and lots of pages inside, so you can look at the table of contents and endorsement comments and so on. And when it's time to order a book, you can say you want to do that, and they're offering you a 30% discount.
Oh,
So
lovely.
a $35 book, hardback, comes to $25. And when you enter the title and say shopping cart, you get to the shopping cart and there's a little code that you use, and immediately you get that discount. The code
Um,
is 5 letters and 2 numbers, and I'll tell them now, and you can put them in your show notes and so on.
sure.
AUFLY 30.
Okay.
A Awfully, AUFLY
Yeah,
30.
I better write that down.
I've done it myself, and I bought a couple of copies for myself.
Should.
AUFLY 30. Now,
So
I know that
I
you've got an audience of a couple of million. If only a few 100,000 sign up, that's okay.
let me just say that again. AUFLY 30.
Yes.
Yeah. So the number that is
And instantly on the page in front of you, it goes from 34.95 to 24.95.
wonderful, wonderful. That
Thank
is,
you. Thanks for
that
your
is,
help with that.
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Um, Tom, thank you again for today. I'm going to give you the closing word in a moment, but thank you once again for joining me today. Like a wonderful conversation we've had here. I don't think
Thanks
there
for
is
having me.
enough conversations around grief. People leave it sort of tucked into the corner under a rug and don't bring it out. And I think, like anything in life, you've got to pull it out and work your way through it so that you can relearn how to do some of these things beautifully and live the beautiful life that you've got left, as well as remember, I should know how she'll show up here, but this is my Liv. It's cold here today, so she's wearing her beanie, but this is
Uh,
Liv's urn.
Good
um
for
so
her.
yeah, she always wore a beanie when it was cold. um
Uh,
Thank you so much. Closing word for you. What would you say is the greatest advice you've ever received?
the greatest advice I've ever received. Um, I'm going to make it up. Uh,
It can be
um,
yours. That's fine.
yeah, when the going gets tough, go slow and careful. Be patient with yourself, and think of the connections that have always nourished you, and count on it still being there.
Beautifully said. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you. Let's talk afterwards.